Good evening and welcome to the March 13th Council Committee of the Whole for March 13th, 2019. And just for the people at home who might be watching and the people in the audience, we'll be going into Committee of the Whole after item 6.1 on your agenda. So at this time, I'm looking for any items, emergent items for the agenda. Do any of the councillors have any emergent items? Seeing none from administration, do we have any emergent items?
Your Worship, there was an item that was added during in-camera, was an item pertaining to FOIP Section 24, and that would have been item 8.3 on the agenda. We're also looking to amend the items from administration. We're hoping to move item 6.6 to follow item 6.2.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Councillor Sobel.
Worship, I'm sorry, I thought administration would bring this up, but there is, or I'm sorry, is it on there already? There is one additional item that I would like to talk. It is a matter of urgency that we raised this issue, and it's got to do with the 2022 Alberta Summer Games. If we could add that onto the agenda, please.
So Jennifer, are we looking to put that after Development Services quarterly update? Or would it be urgent? Sorry, 7.1?
Your Worship, it would.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for that, Councillor Sobel. So at this point, I'm looking for a motion to confirm the agenda as amended. Councillor Peterson.
I would move the March 13th amendment as agenda, Your Worship.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Sorry. The motion is carried. That brings us to item 3.1. We have a delegation tonight. We have on my sheet it says Mr. Mark Bishop from the Wheatland Kings, but I believe we have two speakers tonight, and I think Steve Stovka is one. Okay, if you wouldn't mind coming forward to the microphone, and if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, and then just before you speak, it's required of me to remind all our delegations you'll have a 10-minute presentation time, and then there'll be a chance for questions or comments from council. So thank you and welcome tonight, gentlemen.
I guess it's Blair Wilson and Stephen Stovka, and thank you for letting us speak this evening. We're here to speak on behalf of the Wheatland Kings Junior B. We do represent the current governing board. Wheatland Kings is not a non-profit organization that has been active in our community for 10 years. Evidence of this is the alumni game this coming Saturday, where 2 full rosters have been accepted to play and celebrate the
Thank you very much, Councillor Cox. You've all heard her motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Item 5, unfinished business. I don't believe we have anything unfinished. That brings us to items from administration, and that brings us to item 6.1, the Calgary Mustangs request for a letter of support for the AJHL. And Tracy Simpson, we welcome you, and we again thank you for your efforts and the arena staff's efforts on putting together a very comprehensive report for us.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as requested by Council, administration has put together a feasibility assessment looking strictly at whether the 30 home games and daytime practices required by a junior A team like the Mustangs could be accommodated in our existing facility schedule. So one thing to keep in mind is we did this assessment based on the understanding that the Wheat Kings would leave the facility. And a review, if they could cohabitate in the facility, would look vastly different, and we'd have to go back and relook at that. The goal of the report is to see if it's feasible for a junior A team to be accommodated in our schedule, what impacts that would have on our existing users, and to provide council with some information to make an educated decision this evening. So the report speaks about the impact to the users. So as everyone knows, the Mustangs would have 30 home games, which is approximately 105 hours of ice. This ice is primetime ice, so evenings and weekend time slots. As you can see in the report, the Mustangs have indicated 4 slots that they would use to schedule their home games. Tuesday evenings, Friday evenings, Saturday evenings, and Sunday afternoon, early evenings, 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock. And as it was explained to us by the team, they submit 80 times and dates to the league in April. The league then takes all of those times from all of the teams and builds a master schedule for the season, which is no small feat considering the travel distances between some of the teams. From us to Fort McMurray, for example, is a big travel commute that is factored into all of those times. The majority of the impacts kind of per day game is about anywhere between a 30-minute impact to an hour and a half or a full time slot being impacted. The biggest user that would be impacted by those times is the Wheatland AA team, which would have to move their games to either other time slots or to other facilities. I won't go much into the details of each game, and if council has questions about each of those time slots, we can discuss them. But one of the things that was reiterated by the Mustangs team is their willingness to accommodate. Their league requires a no later game time start than 7:30, so it puts more constraint on the schedule than some teams that have more control over their over their game times. But they would make accommodations. For example, warming up on what we call dirty ice or unflooded ice to kind of fit it in a bit more strategically. Some small conditions or accommodations, 15 minutes here, but in the long run, it can make a big impact on the schedule. As you can see in the report, the master schedule is kind of what we call our ground zero schedule, where we start out from the year. It probably doesn't look anything like that now in the facility, as users have swapped ice to accommodate different teams as they've built through the season. But it gives you an idea of how much ice each user is allocated throughout the week. As you can see on that schedule and through the reports, the majority of ice times requested by the Mustangs for games would impact minor hockey bookings, primarily because the gold ice is primarily used for minor hockey as well as a handful of ringette slots. In terms of figure skating, they don't use the gold ice for anything, and so their impact would be very minor. That being said, our allocation policy would still be upheld, and any impacts to a user would be distributed across the users to ensure fair and consistent use in the facility. Again, that being said, if council wishes to alter that policy to accommodate certain users, we can look at that. So overall, to accommodate the games of the Mustangs, users will be impacted. Some teams would have to relocate practices and some games into other facilities, most likely county rinks in the surrounding area. As for the practices, just listened to the Wheat Kings for so long. The Mustangs have indicated their practices would be daytime, approximately an hour and a quarter per day, 5 days a week. And this schedule can be very flexible. They indicated they'd be interested in practicing on both sheets of ice, as they would play a lot of their games on the blue sides, and so it benefits them to practice on either side. As you can see in our schedule, there is lots of room to accommodate daytime ice, and this wouldn't impact the growth of any other school programs, additional hockey programs, or the addition of a ringette program, as there's plenty of daytime usage available every day of the week. In terms of economics, obviously a bigger season brings more dollars into the facility. Based on some really rough calculations since last Wednesday, the 30 home games would see an increase over our existing revenue of about $22,000 to $25,000 for the season. And that's just looking at games and practice times. That doesn't factor in preseason, playoffs, or any camps that they run in their pre and post season. Nor does it factor in advertising revenue that could potentially be impacted by a junior A team. So at the request of council, we discussed with the Mustangs what would make up an MOU should we go down that road. We discussed blackout dates. It was communicated to us that when they submit their 80 game times, they're also allowed to submit 3 weekends that the league will guarantee as blackout dates in your community. You can submit more than 3, but they'll only guarantee 3. And we discussed that the novice tournament, the Adam tournament for hockey, as well as the Laurie Morton Rupe Ringette Memorial Tournament will be the guaranteed 3 blackout dates. So those tournaments that have developed over the years in our community won't be lost. Provincials will continue to be accommodated in our community. We see great value in our associations bringing provincial events to Strathmore. And as is our policy, when we bring any provincial event into the facility, it accommodates our playoff schedule. We have many teams that do go into playoff season that we try to accommodate throughout the weekend. For those of you who remember when the Bisons were here, especially in this season where they went all the way to the Cup, I forget what it's called. Also not a hockey person, learning lots. We accommodated their playoff practices as well as their playoff games around existing provincial and other events. So it is feasible. An example we used in the report is this past weekend, Ringette hosted a U14A Ringette Provincials. Their schedule would have accommodated a 7 p.m. or 7:30 Saturday night game or a late Sunday game after the provincials ended. The Mustangs indicated that there is some flexibility around those playoff schedules, as everyone in the league understands the pressures of a playoff season in a hockey rink. One of the things discussed previously with council was the large number of weekday evening games the Mustangs currently have. In discussions with them and in doing some research into the league, the Mustangs are the highest team to have the most weekday games, and that's due to their lack of priority in their facility, and it's definitely not the norm in the league, nor is it preference. Right now they play approximately 60% of their games during the week. The league averages about 20% of their games during the week, and so with a move to another community where priority would be rearranged, they would see more evening or weekend games. So other things to accommodate in the MOU would be advertising and concession programs as detailed in the report. There's a variety of opportunities to share revenue from both of those avenues in the facility, as well as other building rental. In terms of revenue, the Wheat Kings have a number of facilities in the building that they rent. The Mustangs would take those over, so there'd be no loss of revenue, and they would be looking for additional space in terms of office. And finally, just a few things to keep in mind when considering the Mustangs. Sorry, let me just find my page. As I mentioned before, this was looked at with the understanding that the Wheat Kings team would be leaving. The majority of ice allocation discussions are made at semi-annual ice user meetings, and we feel confident that these groups could continue to work together to find accommodations that meet everyone's needs in the facility. The Family Center is currently subsidized by over $800,000 or $900,000 per year by our tax base. Additional revenue from increased ice rentals, advertising, concession sales, and additional programs would go directly to offset that deficit. And finally, in the opinion of administration, that the proverbial hit on ice should be distributed over all users. To expect one team or one user group to make that accommodation would directly impact their users and the kids that play in their sport. So I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Tracy, for your presentation and again for your report today. Are there any questions from councillors? I believe I have Councillor Sobel and then Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. I understand that the February Ringette tournament is guaranteed, and that is from the mouth of the Mustangs, in agreement with the town that they're willing to guarantee that slot.
Yeah, correct. Through the chair, we would put that in the MOU that those 3 tournaments would be protected blackout weekends.
Thank you. And am I correct? And I don't believe I read that in the report, but am I correct in understanding that the Mustangs have indicated that they're willing, if need be, to play regular
in moving more games.
Okay, thank you. And also, I'm curious about when the Mustangs were here, as well as the Wheat Kings, combined. Can you tell me how many home games there were?
When,
The Bisons?
I'm sorry, what did I say?
Mustangs.
The Bisons.
yes. Yes.
I'm not a hockey person either.
So there were 18 home games for the Wheat Kings, as well as, it's in the report, I don't remember off the top. 17, thank you, Wayne. There was 36 total home games between those 2 associations.
So-
And so we would be moving to 30 home games.
Okay, and I just a very quick comment, actually, in regards to deficit for the family center, based on our director's recent information, I would advise that for 2018, it was 905,000, and it's projected for 2019 to be 945,000. Thank you, that's all I have, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. In your report, you mentioned something about displacing school program coaches.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Montgomery, we, one of the things that the Mustangs indicated they would require is office space for their administrative staff. Currently, we don't have any empty office space in the building, and so there's a couple options to provide them with that space. One is we could convert a meeting room into an office. We would more or less be revenue neutral on that because we do bring in a significant amount of revenue in renting out those meeting rooms for tournaments and tryouts and things like that. When the Bisons were here, there's an office on the gold side under the bleachers that we call the Hobbit hole because it's small. When the Bisons left, that space became available and the teachers from the hockey programs took that over as their office. One of the options could be, I'm not saying it would be to relocate them maybe somewhere else and put the Mustangs back in there. We're also looking at a couple other options in the arena to accommodate that. We're not sure what the best option is at this point.
And you don't see like it being a problem with the school program coaches? Like because again, like I guess like everyone else, I'm not familiar with hockey, so like is it just teachers that basically work at schools and then come and?
Yes.
Okay.
So they store their equipment there. They
Okay.
use it to plan out their programs, and they're not they may be the phys ed coaches, but they're not the phys ed programs. They're the hockey programs that they've built in the schools, and those are the teachers that use that space. It would be our goal is to relocate them maybe somewhere else in the facility, so still provide them with that space, but maybe not with as good as access. One of the things the Mustangs do is they sell tickets to their games, and providing their office a space to sell those tickets would be ideal over them setting up a table in our lobby, which causes traffic and clutter issues.
Okay. The other question I had was just with regards to your comment about all user groups kind of sharing the burden. And so based on your report, like I understand that Ringette will be displaced Friday nights, I believe it is, due to a game?
Correct.
And then, but do you anticipate that skating, like I didn't see it mentioned in the report, but will skating be displaced at all?
In the existing schedule, skating has no ice slots that would interfere with the potential of Mustang ice slots.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually would have minor hockey take the hit. I think they should lose all ice. They're the ones kind of behind this. They're supporting this. Ringette does not. Skating does not. I don't think that they should take the hit when minor hockey is the drive behind it. I am a minor hockey parent. So I'm trying to separate that out. But in my mind, like it's they're the ones that want it.
So through the chair, Councillor Corbeil, that would have to be a decision of council. It would go in against the policy that we have in place. Our policy is outdated and old and probably should be looked at, and so that may give us an opportunity to kind of open up the discussion about allocation in all our facilities. And so that's something that we can discuss, but it would have to be a decision of council. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tracy, I was just taking a look at your spreadsheet on the very final page. And the one thing that I was most impressed with is that I really see skating and ringette as using ever asked you to move up to 3:45 or an earlier time slot? Because they're here at 4 and 4:30.
So that's a really good question, Councillor Bauer. I had that question as well when I was looking at the schedule, and when I talked to our programmer at the facility, she said this is the first year that minor hockey has had later start times, and apparently it was due to the availability of the coaches to get to the rink for that time slot. That being said, it's a feasibility is to start moving them back. I do believe from this master schedule to where we got at the end of the season, some of them have moved back as well. Yes. Yeah.
Because
they
I think that-
struggle because they have volunteer coaches, and so people have to either leave work early or start at a later time.
Okay, thank you for that. And because figure skating does use the blue ice, I don't see them being impacted, but one of the questions they did pose to me was, will they be bumped off their blue ice from minor hockey or from another user group? Can you comment on that?
Yes, Councillor Bauer, that's kind of what we were talking about with Councillor Corbeil, is if council wanted that the minor hockey kind of took the hit, so to speak, of giving up ice to accommodate the Mustangs, then no, they wouldn't have to give up their time. If we followed our allocation policy, they would, because a minor hockey, as the largest user, gets given a certain percentage of the ice, and if they gave some up, they'd be entitled to more ice.
And
So
how?
while they're not directly impacted, they could be indirectly impacted.
Okay. Thank you. I know that figure skating does pay their coaches, and they do pay them for travel too. So it's just impressive that they've taken full advantage of that and the time slot. The other thing I notice is just on Tuesdays, we have that public skate from 4 until 5 o'clock. How many users are actually using that public skate time?
I would not know that off the top of my head, but it's something I can look at if you're interested.
I'm just thinking in terms of overall ice, are we,
For sure. So the ice schedule is built first for our users, and then we slot in those things. And so at the beginning of every season, we would take out all the public skating times, build the schedule to meet people's needs, and then put public skating back in. So public skating would never be a barrier to any user's ice.
okay. All right, thank you very much for this report. It definitely gave me a lot of additional information that were questions in my mind before, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tracy, I know that you've talked to us before about the percentage of community that actually uses the arena as opposed to other sports. Can you just refresh my memory on that?
The last time we did a survey, Councillor Peterson, which was a significant amount of time ago, I think it was 4 years.
2013.
It was right around 30% of our community.
So we could
use
estimate that it's not terribly different from that at that point. So 30% of our community would access the arena, which is not insignificant. And then, I'm correct in stating that about 25% of public tax dollars goes to support recreation in this community.
Correct.
So 1/4 of our tax dollars go to support recreation. So, as Councillor Sobel pointed out, there is a significant subsidy here. So we're talking about the very best work for the money that we're investing on behalf of our taxpayers. And I heard you reference, although maybe not exactly, that there's great capacity in a junior A hockey team as a leverageable asset to achieve a broader economic goal. And I also remember from other roles that you've played for the community that you talked about the equivalency of, under the Alberta tourism formula, of the amount of money that comes in per person to external economic entities in community, per person in community. Do you recall exactly what that was?
I don't, Councillor Peterson.
I believe it was
$27
$27 per person
Yeah.
that was left in a community in any given instance of someone coming in for an additional event. And I guess when I think about leveraging that aspect, a junior A hockey team becomes a compellable reason to move forward, understanding that there's some risk involved. And also, I guess, thinking about how there is capacity to leverage one event, like a playoff game, as you mentioned, to promote another. So whether that's downtown shopping events like we've been holding in our community, or large car sale events because we have prominent dealerships in our community. I also see that as a possibility. And closing, I want to thank you for the comprehensiveness of the report that you put before us tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
If I could speak to the economic impact, there's a lot of really good studies about the impacts of competitive sport and what they call sport tourism in the industry. And given more time, we could put a more comprehensive report around the economic impacts of a high performance team. One of the spin-offs that could potentially happen, and it's unpredictable, but it's a foreseeable benefit to the community, is people relocating to our community. Coaching staff, athletes' parents, and or the athletes themselves once they finish through the program. Having 33 young adults in our community for 3 or 4 years gives us a great opportunity to promote why Strathmore is a great place to live, and they may come back after their schooling or their career, once their career is set up and settle down in our community. And those are some opportunities that are really hard to measure, but they're definitely worth mentioning.
Your Worship, if I might follow up to respond to Ms. Simpson and to follow the guidelines set out by our legislative services, that when we talk about information that we have, the information that I have came out of the SAGE Journal from Urban Studies and from Taylor and Francis from 2017, and they spoke about that capacity. And so it certainly was a true reflection also of the information that you gave us, and I'm appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson, and you never cease to amaze me with what you've read and learned. You blow me away.
That's where I have to go and you don't know anything else?
Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you as well on my behalf, Tracy. Your report was very in-depth, but I think also, I just want to touch a little bit on the fact that the 30% of from here to standard. Well, what about the kids that play for Strathmore minor hockey?
Their makeup of their teams. As some councillors will remember, we used to, when the town used to charge an out-of-town user fee. Since we disbanded that program, it's not something we've looked at. Through the recreation master plan, that is something we want to try and capture is the data of who's using our facility, and we're going to do that through a number of ways. When I mentioned 30% from a study we did a number of years ago, that was definitely looking just at our user groups, and that doesn't take into account people using it for public skating, or people who come as spectators who use the facility. That's not a reflection of those types of users.
But that user group of 30% is made up of the entire community, correct?
Correct.
Wheatland County as well as the town of Strathmore.
No, just the town of Strathmore.
Oh, it is just the town of Strathmore. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Worship. I do thank you for the report. Again, it was really informative. In my mind, though, when I was trying to make a decision for this, I tried to leave the decisions on what I thought that we should concentrate on. Minor hockey made the decision to support this. So I may think that a 7:45 ice time for, 10 and 11-year-olds, 11 and 12-year-olds, peewee anyways. I think that could be late, but I'm trying to factor that out because minor hockey has taken this down their road. They probably, I think they see the, where they want to go and where they want to take their organization. So I've tried to factor out my thoughts on ice time, except for, like I've said again, like with ringette and skating, they don't, and I don't think that they should take a hit on this. My other things that I saw that were huge would be like the advertising. I see huge potential in what we could bring in for the advertising. I asked some questions about what we do now, and we don't really have much effort put into that. And in this package, it stated something about the Mustangs doing advertising, and I would actually, on a side note, like to venture that out to all of the organizations. Mm-hmm. The more, I think, advertising that we can bring in as a shared profit or as some kind of work, I would like to have that future conversation. I see huge economic benefit to having a junior A team. I would like to make a motion, if I may.
Is there one thing you want to, do we have comments?
I have one additional question.
Would you be comfortable with
Absolutely.
postponing just for a moment? Councillor Sobel and then Councillor Bauer.
Thank you. So just to follow up on the displacement of the ringette, is there more than one situation where they're displaced other than Friday nights?
So Councillor Sobel, it kind of depends on how the schedule rolls out throughout the year. So
Right.
what happens is we start with a base schedule, and then as needs come up and schedules in the associations are built, the users trade ice.
Right.
And so it's hard to say for sure
Yeah.
where that impact would be, but based on what we do today, there's limited impact.
So according to this report anyway.
Yeah.
We've got them moving, instead of starting at 5:45 on Friday night, they're starting at 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a
On
15-minute
the other ice,
quote-unquote displacement.
correct.
And as far as we know at this point, that's the extent of the displacement, of the quote-unquote hit.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So will Councillor Bauer.
Just gonna end with a few final thoughts. So I really agree with Councillor Corbeil that we do have real capacity for sponsorship. And there was one thing that Councillor Peterson brought up too, that already said to me that they would be willing to purchase season tickets, and they would be looking at using that as part of their entertainment. I'm not too really keen on penalizing minor hockey just because they have said that they would like to go forward and embrace having the Strathmore Mustangs. So I don't really want to go down that path. But what I did want to ask you, Tracy, was everyone's talking about the fact that our arena is so overused. Well, we don't have a lot of time slots in usable time after hours. And does this put us in a position where we would be able to access regional and provincial grant money based on usership? Like, does it forward our case to be able to get a new arena? Or is it just presenting council again with the fact that this is real need in our area?
It's a good, Councillor Bauer, I'm not sure there's any direct funding out there that would go, that we could access because we have a junior A team. But there's some indirect benefits to getting us to a new sheet of ice faster with a team like this. And one of them falls in that advertising sponsorship realm. Because they have a larger market segment and a higher level of attraction for corporate dollars and franchises, we may see an more ease in attracting corporate dollars into the building, which would help offset our current operating costs as well as help fund a new arena. Things like boxes and junior A development camps will help enhance our existing programs and help enhance revenue for sure. We see great value in some of those things as we look to expand or add a new add on to the building. One of the benefits of having any user that's a nonprofit is their ability to partner with the town and access grants that the town can't. The Mustangs, along with some of our other users in the facilities who we partnered in the past, have identified that they'd be willing to be those partners to put their names on grants to help promote the rejuvenation, I guess, of our facility. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I just have one last thing that I'll add, and that is if the Mustangs were in existence this current season, I just want to verify the Ringette people would have had their Laurie Roop tournament okay. That would have been a blackout weekend, and they would have been fine with provincials too, as far as potential Mustangs games after provincial games were over.
Like in the season that just passed?
Got it now, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
The only caveat I would put on that is we don't guarantee provincial weekends.
Right.
Every user group wants to bring provincials, and like I said before, we love having them here. But sometimes we do have to prioritize them, and we've had conflict in the past. And so I'd be hesitant to go so far as we'd guarantee provincials, but the
Yeah.
town would continue to support bringing provincials to our community.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would like to think, hopefully moving forward, that the various user groups can work together to try to, if this passes, to try to lessen the blow for everyone as far as ice use and ice loss. So thank you again for your presentation tonight and your report. Councillor Corbeil, did you want to, Councillor Cox, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to administration. Can I just make a motion? Yeah. Because we haven't got into committee of the whole, correct? Thank you. Sorry about that. I can make the motion if you're okay with that.
Okay, carry on.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the council agree to send a letter of support to the Calgary Mustangs for moving to Strathmore. Good enough?
Does that motion need to include the coming season, the season that it is coming up? Do you need it
There is a motion on, there were two motions.
I move that council provide a letter of support to the Calgary Mustangs Junior A hockey team to move their franchise to the town of Strathmore and become the Strathmore Mustangs.
Thank you for that motion. We've had questions of Tracy before the motion, and now there's a motion on the floor. Is there discussion or comments? Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just finish my comments quickly. So when I was viewing this in my head, again, we talked about like the pros and cons or what I was trying to leave out. I see huge potential in the mentorship programs that this team would have coming into town and the positive influence it could have. And I actually don't think it would just be for minor hockey. I really hope that Ringette would be able to take advantage of it too, even if it's the Flex Fridays and if they're doing skating. Great. I like the increase in revenue for the facility. I think that that's a forward motion if we ever want to extend for more ice surfaces. We can't keep running the way it is. And I think it's a good thing for this community. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Are there any other comments from any other council members? Councillor Bauer.
I'm just, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to say that with the Family Centre facility currently being subsidized over $800,000 by tax dollars, having sat through 2 years of budget meetings now, I know that each 1% increase of 1% increase in taxes for a Strathmore resident is $125,000 for the town. And so this is really, for me, it comes down to the economic benefit for the town as a whole, and how am I going to make the best decision for everyone involved. And I'm really, really hoping that that this decision is not going to hurt any of our user groups. And I hope that they know that regardless of how we decide, you can come to us and tell us how you've been impacted so that we can continue to mitigate the impact that it's going to have on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Montgomery, then Councillor Cox.
As the ownership group of the we support this letter based on what I've been told as far as how the other groups will be impacted. Community, and that is why I support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make something clear to the public, our audience. The motion that we're passing tonight is for a letter of support for the Calgary Mustangs to move their franchise to Strathmore. We are not the deciding factor, and that does not mean that they are in any way, shape, or form approved to play here in Strathmore. Correct, Tracy?
Councillor Cox, you would be correct. The decision solely lies with the league, and our letter of support would be part of their package in requesting their move.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the last thing I'd like to add is that I tried to bring all the user groups together to get them a voice and get them involved in making the decision and to talk to each other about ice times and what we face. The bottom line is it still comes to us because we have to decide if we're going to do a letter of support for this franchise to possibly relocate here. And when we make the decision, I know my councillors we've been agonizing over this, and there's been a lot of discussion in the last weeks with ourselves and myself and many of the people in the public. We're trying to do the right thing for the majority of our residents, and keep in mind that we want to try to move the town forward. We're trying to become a different Strathmore. We're progressing. So that's the thing that's weighed on my mind as I try to make my decision. So that's my only comment. Anything else? We're okay, councillors? So we have a motion on the floor, a positive motion to, we don't need to hear it reread, do we, ladies and gentlemen? So you've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion, and the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors, for your hard work on a tough decision. Thank you very much to Tracy, her staff, and the staff at the arena, as well as the administrative team for all the work you folks have done too. We hope that the various user groups can work together, and we feel that this could be a very good thing for the town of Strathmore moving forward. And at this time, we need a motion to go into committee of the whole. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that we go into committee of the whole.
Can we take a quick recess in committee of the
Point
whole,
of
or do we do that before we
privilege.
motion? Can we, yeah, we'll have a motion to take a quick recess, and then we'll have a motion to go into committee of the whole. Thank you. All right, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. And at this time, I believe Councillor Cox is making a motion to go into committee of the whole.
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move to go into committee of the whole.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cox. You've all heard the motion. I hope there's no discussion. All in favor? And we're going into committee of the whole. And our first item is 6.2 Town of Strathmore Opportunity Assessment Update, which is found on page 9 of your program.
Yeah, it's in here.
And Justin Rubella, welcome tonight.
So I've been told to stand far away from the keys. So good afternoon, good evening, Council. It's my pleasure to introduce James and Tracy from HOK. At the end of last year, the town hired HOK to conduct some focus groups and research to help inform the town's upcoming MDP and economic development plan. For the past 3 months, they've been meeting with various focus groups in the town, as well as developers, builders, and real estate agents, as well as some internal groups for the town in terms of planning and engineering. Would like to give an update, and the final report is going to be due end of April. So we're just looking for some council feedback on that. Anything else you'd like us to include in the final report, and to take this report for information. So I'd like to please to bring Tracy and James to the mic. Thank you.
Good evening, members of council and your worship. My name's Tracy, as Justin mentioned, and this is James. We've been retained by the. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. We've been retained to do the opportunity assessment, which we'll explain in more detail. Just if I need to. Oh, okay. All right. So we'll begin with a quick review of what we're going to talk about today. First, we'll provide a brief description of what we're tasked to do, followed by a quick overview of our approach or the main steps we took to complete the work. Third, we'll move into a review of the preliminary comparative analysis, which involved a high-level comparison of the demographic and socioeconomic characteristics of Strathmore and a couple of nearby communities. Next, we'll review the key stakeholder engagement. For example, who was involved, how were they consulted, and the outcomes, which is presented as the preliminary SWOT analysis. Next, we'll provide a bit of a summary on what makes Strathmore unique from the perspective of these key stakeholders. And last, we'll start connecting some of the dots and identify some of the emerging opportunities, which will be followed by a discussion of next steps. So we were tasked by the town to conduct an opportunity assessment, which we are also referring to as a SWOT analysis. The premise of this study was that growth is desired and the long-term objective is to grow to 30,000 people. This was the assumption that was provided to us by administration, so we just proceeded on that basis. The first objective of the study was to identify the town's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats relative to this growth objective. The second objective was to identify elements that set Strathmore apart from other nearby communities. And the third objective was to connect these elements to identify emerging opportunities to help the town frame future planning initiatives such as the MDP. In order to do this, our first step was to gain an understanding of the characteristics of Strathmore and surrounding communities. The next step was to engage key stakeholders in the real estate and development industry to obtain their perspective on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then the next step we'll do is to meet with planning and engineering staff to obtain their perspective on current state and administrative tools used to facilitate growth. The last step we'll take is to synthesize what we heard and provide suggestions on what the town may consider when developing their MDP and new economic development strategy. So this is the regional context, which, I mean, you're all very familiar with. I'm just showing this to show where the communities that we chose to highlight in this presentation were Chestermere and Crossfield. So the reason why we chose Chestermere as one of the comparative communities is really because it's our closest neighbor on the east-west corridor, and it's often naturally referred to when referencing comparisons with Strathmore. We chose Crossfield, which may seem like an unusual comparison given it's quite a bit smaller in terms of population. But what we learned through the process was that not only it's a similar distance to Calgary as Strathmore is, but just in the north-south direction. But also when we started talking to stakeholders, they were also doing business in Crossfield. And it's a similar demographic. So they're looking at similar housing products and catering to a similar demographic. And our demographic research seemed to support this. So next, this is just a quick overview of population characteristics. The key point to note with respect to age structure is the 20 to 39-year age cohort in Strathmore it's shrinking in comparison to Alberta. This age cohort is important because this is the group forming families and spending money in the community. And while this is not necessarily atypical of smaller towns when people go off to do post-secondary education and start their careers, it is something to make note of because they are such an important demographic in terms of the economy and stability of the population. Also noteworthy is that Strathmore has a comparatively high population of 65 plus years, so it's about 16%. Compared to Chestermere, it's around 7%. So it is, and it's not necessarily a negative. It's an interesting fact that there's quite a large retired community here. Also noteworthy is just the rate of population growth. So Strathmore has experienced about a 2.7% increase annually between 2001 and 2016. Chestermere is quite a bit higher at about 4.9% per year over that same time period. With respect to housing, the median value of housing in Strathmore is about $325,000 per year, or it's $325,000, which again is relatively similar to Crossfield at around $350,000. Chestermere is significantly higher with the median housing value of about $530,000. And again, these are statistics, I should have mentioned, they're based on federal census data from 2016. So it is a little bit dated, but that's the data that we have available for comparison. In terms of housing tenure, Strathmore is, in comparison to Chestermere, there's quite a few renters here. About 21% of the population is renting, compared to about 8% in Chestermere, and vice versa. So there's a larger percentage of the Chestermere population is homeowners at about 92%, compared to 79% in Chestermere. Also, what's noteworthy about Strathmore is the housing diversity compared to other communities. So, for example, 60% of the housing stock is single detached, while 23% is multifamily, which is significantly different than Chestermere, where 80% of the housing stock is single detached and only 12% multifamily. In terms of income and wealth, Strathmore has one of the lower median household incomes at about $89,000 per year, compared to Chestermere, which is around $134,000, and Crossfield around $96,000 per year. Also noteworthy is, although it is housing expenditure, or monthly housing costs in Strathmore is quite a bit lower. Again, this is probably intuitive, but to put some values associated with it, owners are spending about $1,400 per month compared to $2,200 per month in Chestermere. And renters, it's significantly lower at $1,200 per month versus $1,700 per month in Chestermere. In terms of housing expenditure, 45% of renters are spending 30% or more of their income on housing. And we point this out because it points to a housing affordability issue with renters, or a potential housing affordability issue with renters. And there could be a number of reasons for that. It could be just low vacancy rates driving up rental prices, which is putting renters in a difficult position. In terms of labor force, Strathmore has the lowest labor force participation rate. Labor force refers to the percentage of the working age population working or looking for work. And that's around 71% compared to 79% participation rate in Chestermere and 75% in Crossfield. Again, there could be several reasons for that. Given housing, housing tends to be a bit cheaper here, which means families who have one income parents, someone stays at home, looks after the kids, someone working. So it's more enticing to families who may want to have one person stay at home with the kids. In terms of education, in Strathmore, people are more likely to have sort of a trade certificate or diploma compared to Chestermere, where they're more likely to have a bachelor's degree or master's degree or higher. This is also reflected in the types of occupations that people have, which we'll touch briefly on in the next slide. In terms of unemployment rate, Strathmore sits around 8.7%, and again, this is a bit dated because it's based on 2016 data, compared to Chestermere at 7.3%. So it's similar, but a bit higher here. In terms of commute location, we weren't able to do a comparison here because of geographical boundary issues, but it does provide some insight into Strathmore. And about 50% of the people living and working in Strathmore, 50% of the people living in Strathmore are also working in Strathmore, which is not bad. It's not a commuter community like Chestermere is, for example. 40% are commuting to a different census division. Now that is likely Rocky View County or Calgary. I say that with census divisions are a little hard to say for sure, but the 10% is likely people commuting within the county, Wheatland County. Commute times, about 42% are commuting less than 15 minutes, which corresponds really to the commute locations. So I won't really get into much detail there. I think the main takeaway there is that 50% of the people living here also seem to be working in close proximity to the town or within the town. In terms of occupations, people in Strathmore are more likely to have blue-collar jobs compared to people in Chestermere, who are more likely to have a white-collar type of job. And with that, I will turn it over to James to talk about the Key Stakeholder Engagement.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council in the gallery. My name is James Mazak, and I'm going to continue on with this presentation and speak about the Key Stakeholder Engagement. So what we were tasked to do is a number of individuals were identified, as shown on the slide here, local developers, builders, and realtors within the town of Strathmore that have actively had projects or are currently active with projects. And we were tasked to go out, engage with them, call them on the phone and say, look, the town is really interested in doing some analysis and have a better understanding of how and what is needed to grow their population from its current just over around 14,000 to 30,000. And as a key participant and a key stakeholder in a sample of our entire population, this realtor and developer group, they were enthusiastic. We asked, every person we asked, we ended up getting more people to come out and participate. People were calling and saying, look, I'm also working with this individual. Can this individual come? So we asked 100% of the people, we got 120% response. And that is a first for people who want to volunteer their time and come out and they're passionate about your community and they wanted to contribute. So that is a kudos to you. Whatever you've done, keep doing that. So when we look at the different individuals there, we got a great participation response. And to move forward and talk about what we did with these individuals, we contacted them, we spoke with them on the phone, we discussed what your goals and aspirations are. We advised them that the objective of this exercise was going to have them fill out a questionnaire, provide their responses, and also participate in a SWOT analysis. And I'll get to that in this slide here. So you might be asking, what is a SWOT analysis? So the theme areas that we concentrated on about your objective to grow the town's population to 30,000 was we looked at community amenities and lifestyle. You might be wondering, well, these are all wonderful things, but what is a SWOT analysis? And so I'll give you a standard Wikipedia definition of a SWOT analysis, and I'll translate that into our task at hand. It's a strategic planning technique used to help an organization identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats intended as and threats related to business, competition, or project planning. So the business competition is, what are other communities doing in your region that you're similar to, whether it's Chestermere or, as we discovered, as Tracy pointed out, with the town of Crossfield. So we wanted to find out from their perspective as industry leaders what their understanding were of your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and the threats that you face in getting your population from here up to 30,000. And so through that, it's an intended to specify, a SWOT analysis is also intended to specify the objectives of the business or the venture, the organization. And that objective that we provided them with was, again, taking your population here and increasing it up to 30,000. And by doing that, specifying that criteria, they all came into the room understanding we're growing the population to 30,000. And so we wanted them to identify the internal and external factors of how that are favorable and not favorable to achieve that objective. So it was a very specific task that we asked them to do, and it brings forward a lot of information. So when we talked about community amenities and lifestyle, we talked about governance, town policy, municipal infrastructure, commerce, industry and employment, and housing and development. All of these things impact everybody in the community, some shape or form. So that's where we did a SWOT analysis. Now, with that SWOT analysis, we don't have that slide anymore?
No, you can just speak to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so within the strengths of our SWOT analysis, and it's in your package there, it's not on the board there. So civic amenities, we looked at recreation, hospitals, schools, and shopping. The developers and the real estate and development industry representatives that were selected came back and said, that's a huge strength that you have. You have these facilities and these amenities, these civic facilities and amenities. They also commented on the secure water supply and sanitary upgrades that have recently been done, and they saw that wasn't going to be a hindrance. That's actually a strength. You have those facilities in place to actually accommodate a 30,000 population. The other thing was they talked about the location. You're on a major transportation east-west corridor, and you have great access to the northeast part of the city of Calgary with a lot of industrial lands. And most importantly, you still retain that small-town lifestyle, and it's relatively affordable. And another positive was for those people who were commuting outside of your community, primarily to the city of Calgary, they used the term, the sun is always at your back. And so you're not having that glaring sun that we had when we drove out this afternoon. And that can be a huge deterrent. So if it's something that you're going to market your community, you want to highlight those sorts of things. Now, if we went to the weaknesses, some of the things that came up in discussion, and all our sessions that we had with these key stakeholders, we've documented, recorded exactly what they had to say, and that will be included in your package and report. So you can see what each of these particular groups had to say with regards to all of these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So that you can then dive into more detail. And so, for example, the town lacks full-time fire department. And why that came up is they're going, look, some homes have to have fire supplementary, they have to have an internal sprinkler system, and that's an added cost. And some were debating, you know, would it be better to take that money that you'd be investing into the individual home build and put that money towards a long-term fire solution? Stormwater management challenges, as you know, there are issues with stormwater management that are on the radar for the developers, and they're hoping to work with administration and town council to come up with some solutions that benefit not just themselves or the municipality, that it's something that can be, you know, be creative and innovative to, you know, enhance their communities and enhance their developments, rather than being something that consumes more land and so forth. Now, there's now the one thing, another weakness was the decrease in housing starts and low absorption. So in 2017, there was over 300 housing starts. In last year, 2018, there was 25. That's a significant decrease. And one of the builders came forward and said, look, if you want to keep if you want to continue to have developers here, you need to at least have like 50 housing starts per year to support a single developer. And so that becomes a big challenge to overcome. And that's a significant weakness. And it partly has to do with the economy, and there's other things. And they provide a lot of solutions, and they're open for that conversation. So no new industry or jobs to support growth. And why Crossfield becomes interesting as part of this weakness, we'll do a little comparison here. So Crossfield has been creating jobs, and they took a very different approach to attracting jobs by making some of their commercial industrial lands virtually free. Buy it for $1 as long as you build a new facility, bring some jobs in here. And that took one developer. He said, I sold in the last 2 years, last 3 years, I sold 2 lots. In comparison to Crossfield, I sold over 150. We're in the same economic environment. And so, you know, that's a weakness. The weaknesses are something that you have the control as council to set policy, set direction. And please understand, this is the perspective and the understanding of a single key holder stakeholder group. And this is the real estate and development group. This is not reflective of any other group. And there's other groups to go out and solicit and get input and information from to help, you know, formulate your bigger, larger policy. But this is just a sample of your population. So the other weakness was limited marketing assets of your community. I mean, you have a huge number of assets. And for the very first time, and it was almost uncanny and untimely, that we started on this job. I'm driving in the car and I heard a commercial on the radio advertising Strathmore for the very first time. And I listen to the radio all the time. So that's something that is going to, you know, if there's an opportunity to do more of that, but also, maybe I'm skipping ahead too far because I'm so excited about the opportunities that they wanted to discuss with you. But getting your name out there, making sure that people understand that you're a community, that you have all these great amenities, is something that you can approve on. If you haven't, so looking at the opportunities, so provide incentive. So because of this huge decrease in the number of housing starts, it's putting an additional financial burden, and everyone's feeling it. Municipalities are feeling it, developers are feeling it, and landowners and homeowners are feeling it. What they're trying to say, is there any opportunity to provide incentives to attract businesses that generate jobs and perhaps even defer offsite levies and business property taxes to kind of invigorate, to create that opportunity? That's one perspective. And there's pluses and minuses to that. Because if everybody else starts doing it, everyone's racing to the bottom of the barrel. And then that's not sustainable. The other opportunity they felt was collaborate with Wheatland County to solve the firefighting issue or concerns. So one of the developers was saying they take probably about 8.5 minutes to assemble at the fire hall. They need at least 4 of them before they can dispatch from the fire hall. You have a 10-minute response time. Doesn't give you a lot of time to actually fight any fires and get there within a 10-minute response time. And so they're saying, would there be an opportunity to collaborate with Foothills? You have collaboration, with Wheatland. And the challenge there is you have some agreements already in place with your recreation center. Is that something that could be possible and feasible with the fire opportunity? The other opportunity they thought of is build on the agricultural base, attract agribusiness, food processing, and hydroponics, for example. And what's interesting is they identified agribusiness as an opportunity. Are we not surrounded by agriculture? So this is a different group, and I thought, wow, I thought that would have been one of your strengths, having the agribusiness around here. But they felt that there was more opportunity. It was more of an opportunity because there are certain things, for example, barley. We learned that you guys have this great microbrewery that I have to visit. And so you look at barley and you go let's say from an economic perspective, barley, it's a food. And then it's agriculture. So what can you do with that barley? Well, you can make beer, you can make whiskey, and the byproduct of that is feed for your intensive livestock operations, which are surrounding you as well. Then you look at it and go, okay, what else can you do? Well, in Saskatchewan, they're looking at using barley and peas to do ethanol generation. There's other opportunities, there are other tertiary processing capabilities that the province, from an agricultural perspective, is always looking at saying, how can you do better? How can you diversify your economy? How can you build on what you already have? And I'm going, well, I thought that would have been a strength, but they're going, no, it's an opportunity because it's untapped, in their opinion. They thought of it more as you have all these agricultural lands and this productivity, but it goes somewhere else. It kind of passes through instead of keeping it in your area, building upon it. And I'll give you some examples. Where I grew up in southwestern Ontario, there's Leamington, Ontario, tomato capital of Canada, if you didn't know. But that's where Heinz built their facility to do ketchup. Hiram Walker's, Walkerville, Ontario. It's been amalgamated into Windsor, but he created Canadian Club whiskey, world famous, distributions all over. But he took those raw ingredients, those raw things that come from the earth that you are already producing and you have top quality, and he just kept building on it and saying, okay, this water from the city and this barley, you can make beer. Then you bottle that, you need bottling, you need distribution, and you start building that capacity, you build those jobs. And in an economic market like we're in, when you look at these brew houses and these, they're interesting because they're an economic generator unto themselves, and you're saying, well, why don't we scale it up? That's an agricultural capability, and I like to use the word synergy to say one person's waste or byproduct is another person's fuel. And that could be for your animals, and that could be for generating other features of using it for packaging, where you take the byproducts and you just compress them and make them into organic packaging, that part of the waste. So the other thing is they wanted to really look at is the innovative stormwater management solutions benefiting residents and businesses. Right now, they're very fearful that they're going to get to a certain point in their development and they won't be able to do any more development because they hit this stormwater barrier. And there is opportunity. They want to work with the town. They want to come to a solution. And they're willing and open to sit down and collaborate. And that's a great thing. And they also want to collaborate on marketing strategy. You know, you have people that are either living north or south of downtown Calgary and they're commuting. And one gentleman mentioned, why don't you put up a billboard and show what their commute looks like and what the commute looks like going to Strathmore. And a picture is worth 1,000 words, and you can say, you give the exact same date and time on the bottom. One, you can't see anything. The other one, it's clear sailing. You know, like it's a marketing ploy. But they thought, if we collaborated and got all our resources together, worked with your economic development and worked with planning and marketing, you guys could pool those resources and be more effective and have far more reaches. And what's not on here is the idea of working with other commercial entities, because this is one of the threats. Larger retail, going to the threats, larger retailers overlook Strathmore and they don't realize the extent of the regional draw. So if you have a population under 15,000, you're overlooked. You do have some national retailers here, but not all of them. And so a lot of them are now going under census data and saying, oh, well, Strathmore and the city of Chestermere are the exact same economic region. So they count you as one, not two. The other threat was the new mortgage rules. It's harder to qualify. And that is not just for houses, that's also for franchises. So we talked with a real estate person that specializes in commercial real estate, and they said franchises are having a difficult time opening in areas where the population is less than 15,000. It becomes more risky, and banks are risk adverse right now. The other thing is they felt was the city of Calgary determined water hookup fees, so they have to pay a per lot fee hookup, and that rate is set by the city of Calgary. So they felt that was a threat, that it didn't give you the autonomy that you needed to really have control over your utility rates. But anyways, moving on to the emerging differentiators, summary. And I'll put this back on. Welcome back. What makes Strathmore unique in comparison to other communities? You are a complete community. You have all the amenities and features that any family, any person would ever need or want. And the question is, you're not promoting that. You're still being perceived as a bedroom community. Recreation, you got great outdoor, your trail system, second to none. I've heard wonderful things about it. Your indoor facilities that you just upgraded and built, you know, they're fabulous. So those are things that other communities of your size or smaller, or larger or smaller, are comparatively, you have much better facilities. They're more accessible. More housing diversity, as Tracy had mentioned, that you have a split between multifamily and single family. That was somewhat a surprise when most people would think, well, Strathmore, it's all single family and large 3-car garage homes. Not the case. Less income inequality. That's actually a good thing, because you have people that have the similar amount of income. So you don't have the extremes, the ultra rich and the disparaging poor, that you have other issues. But the fact is you're kind of all the same. That can be a good thing. More affordable housing. This applies for home ownership. So when you saw those numbers earlier on that table, you saw $1,400 a month for home ownership and $1,200 for rent. That's a $200 gap between renting and owning. And people aren't making that leap of faith. So that, as Tracy mentioned, there's a number of variables and factors that you have to look at. Now, the other thing is the citizenry and business community willing to engage with the town. People are jumping at the pump. When I called and made the calls to the individuals that we were tasked to contact, we got 120% response. So people really want to be engaged. They want to make a difference. The other thing is mixed age demographic. So what does that mean? Well, we have a senior population. I like to call them the people with the money and the time. And so this is a group that you can cater to. People are living more active lifestyles. They demand more services and activities. They're not sitting at home knitting and watching television anymore. They're active and about in the community. And so what's interesting is if you want to plan the perfect community, you plan for kids and seniors. Everything else will fit in between, because you have to look at accessibility and mobility with that mixed age group. So if you have a young family, this is the place to be as well. So with regards to building consensus and direct future planning, formalize consensus, strengths, and differentiators. So again, building consensus, working with groups, connect issues to develop efficient solutions. So one solution may address several issues. And again, try to create some synergy between your parks, engineering, recreation, as well as your school facilities and other utilities. If there's an opportunity to do it once and do it right, choose that. Take the time to plan it out. Investigate how strategic planning can minimize infrastructure costs, as I just kind of described, and town expenditures. Can you do more with less, and can you have, what's interesting about municipalities is not the difference, like the boundaries, it's the overlap. And wherever you have overlap in your community, those are your opportunities. Those are the interesting, exciting places that you plan, design for, to offer more than one service. That could be land use, that could be a utility. Create things with multiple options, flexibility. Base decisions on best practices to build your community. You're implementing them already, just continue on doing that. Balanced economy, living, environment, triple bottom line approach. When you think about the economy, you have to think about the environment. When you think about the environment, you're thinking about the quality of life and the livability. So the next steps, in this process, we've done the opportunity assessment, the vision and the big ideas come next, and that will feed into your municipal development plan and economic development strategy. That will go back and forth until ultimately you come up with a sustainable communities and economic resilience is built into the design of your community. So I want to end with this slide here for the next step. So we started off with this SWOT analysis about identifying the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to your community. All that feeds now into your municipal development plan. This informs your municipal development plan with the growth objective of reaching 30,000. According to what we understood and what we learned from the Key Stakeholder Group, yes, you do have the ability and the opportunity to grow. And so that's one input. We engage them, we have one-way input. We don't yet have that dialogue to go back to them and say, let's work collaboratively on the issues and concerns and opportunities that you see. But when you look at this ring and these different ovals around here, you have other groups that you also need, and we recommend that you engage as part of your municipal development plan. And we can continue to provide that third-party separation from the town so that we can continue to get that objective response from the group as we did with the real estate development industry. So people like your school boards, your Calgary Health Region. We also want to understand, we can imagine what they believe your strengths are. We can imagine all that stuff, but until you ask them, because you always have to be objective in asking the question. If I ask the question as an outsider, I can be objective and say, okay, what's the strength? And they can respond and say, oh, the strength is the hospital. And they're going, well, what are your plans with the hospital? What do you see the crisis being if we reach 30,000? Well, we're going to have to hire more doctors, nurses, technicians, and all that stuff. Well, that's a good thing. Well, then we better start planning for it. And the same thing with the WID. You know, they're a group that you have to deal with. And we can ask those same questions. They may come back and say, wow, I never thought of that as being a threat or a weakness. We always thought that was an opportunity and a strength. So moving forward to implement your municipal development plan and scoping it out, all of these things add up. The thing that I see the municipality being very active in is when you engage the citizens. That is an engagement process that is not a sample population. That's where you encompass everyone, including the key stakeholders you've already engaged with. Engaging with the key stakeholders as we did is just to get the ball rolling and understand where those people in those distinct activities or industries are coming from. So that at the end of the day, we get input from this group, input from that group, we combine them, we evaluate them and look at them and say, okay, we're all on the same page. And in our conversation with administration, I can tell you that the real estate development industry and administration appear to be on the same page. May have different approaches of how to address some of the opportunities and weaknesses, but at the end of the day, we can begin the conversation, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Eye-opening. I've always kind of fought the image that, I've heard it's for years because I taught here for a long time, that Strathmore is a bedroom community, and it's not. It really is not. Although we do have advantages, like you said, as far as commuting to Calgary. Councillor Peterson.
How many questions am I allowed, Your Worship? Sorry.
We're not allowed to
So two of the things that I found really, really great about this report was the whole conceptual consensus idea, the conceptual analysis, and particularly in the next steps portion. And I really appreciated that you mentioned resilience. And in all the stuff I see and in terms of community engagement, I really do believe that the future is looking much more towards resilience rather than sustainability, that because of all the pressures that are combining to hit on us, that is one of the things that we're looking at. When we were discussing a new municipal development plan and the great necessity, it's such an important part of what drives our community into the future. And so when I was looking at how we would assess the plan quality. And so when I look at this overall, there are things that I very, very much like. And I looked at the plan quality characteristics, and I have no problem with what's there. I have problems with what's not there. And so for me, it's looking at the influences on this plan and how that will influence how we build our municipal development plan into the future. And it is really Ryan Rycroft's fault that this has come about because I'm looking for inspiration. I'm looking for inspiration, and I'm not seeing it yet. I'm hopeful that it's there. I'm looking for inspiration. I'm looking for credibility. I'm looking for the credibility that as a lay person looking for a place to live and build and thrive, what gives us that credibility? I don't see that here. I see that we're poor and maybe a little dumber than Chestermere. That doesn't look good. I'm serious. And so, and if I might continue, that is the legitimacy. And so I don't want to see that in this plan. I want to see it. I want to see what I think and what other people in this community think is the plan quality relative to the other things that I don't see included here, which is a climate change discourse. And I speak highly of my fellow councillor. Councillor Sobel has worked diligently in that area, and that whole diversity in terms of lowering emissions, reducing greenhouse gases, recycling and composting. If there's anything that his 12 years on council or more has given, it has brought that into being. It's an important part of the whole climate change discourse. And so for me, that's a whole part of replacing resiliency with sustainability into the future. And when I hear real estate people who are critical to our well-being in our community talking about needing 50 new housing starts, I also want to say, well, what's different? I don't see anything different. And there's such huge capacity. And all the research today is about, how to grow a city. Is talking about, gateways to urban agriculture. And it's just not happening here. And it could. We have an agricultural community, an urban agricultural community that's unlike any place in the world. We have every single urban agricultural commodity that I have not seen anywhere else on the planet, other than maybe Northeast Africa, which is an emerging economy. And so I think that those are the kinds of things that I want to see. I want to see in this plan as we go forward, and we have a month left to do this. I want to see incorporating those things that are missing. But I appreciate what is here, and particularly those two instances of conceptual consensus. I really appreciate that.
Your Worship.
Sure.
What I would like to comment on, this is not the plan.
I understand.
This was just the initial engagement with a sample population within a much greater, and so.
But you did ask for input.
Yes, that's correct. And what I'd like to offer as a suggestion moving forward, those are all great ideas. And when you look at the environment, and when we're trying to say it's a balance, so you can go to the sustainability, that's last year's trend, couple years trend. The resiliency is definitely, what do you do in hard times? How can you still make it work? And by going to each of these individual groups, we're hoping that when you go to other agencies like Alberta Environment to get their input, to say, what are going to be our challenges of going from 14,000 to 30,000? And they come back and provide some comments, or your other groups, your agricultural group, the Ag Board comes back and says, well, we're already having challenges at 14,000. How are we going to survive at 30,000? They need to be part of the solution. So regardless of who, what you plan to do, the collaboration and engaging your entire population will make it that much more resilient and be able to accommodate the greatest population. If you plan without consulting other groups, you're planning based on your preconceived notion of what you think is happening with their group. And until you ask that question, and until you engage them, you can only speculate. And that's what planning's taught me over the years, is that everything that you said can be in your plan. It's just we need to ask those questions and we need to engage those members. So we gratefully would, look at. Yeah, they'll be identified, but they would not be engaged.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your report and your presentation. We look for, Councillor Peterson?
I would just move that we accept the report for information. Thank you, Worship. Oh, or not, never mind.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Thank you again for your presentation and report.
Should I make my motion right now?
No, not yet.
All right, that brings us to not Councillor Montgomery's motion yet, we're hoping. But we are on,
Even if I just read all my
we have one moved up, and it's the Development Services Quarterly Update. We've moved the item 6.6 to follow 6.2, and then we'll go into Animal Control Bylaw. Justin, are you here for that one too?
Yes.
Okay, thank you and welcome again.
Thank you, Council. I know it's been a long night, so I'm going to try and go through this as fast as I can and skip through some slides and get through more of a summary. So I have 5 major updates in terms of an updated vision and mandate that our team has put together, the Development Services Applicant survey that we've recently begun to implement at the beginning of this year. Just a very quick update on some relationship building with Wheatland County, the real estate appreciation event, and some major project updates. So I'm just going to quickly just get to the slide that summarizes our mandate and the vision. I won't read through each one because of the time, but I just wanted to reiterate that our team got together, really started to talk about what our team wanted to be known for, what we wanted to move away from, and what we wanted to be proud of. The key things that really came out of this was we wanted to be known to partner with the development industry. We wanted to collaborate with them to achieve their vision and encourage the overall innovation in projects. We wanted to be more consistent and and also transparent. We wanted to maintain really high levels of professionalism, and we wanted just to really pride ourselves in an approach that developers feel that we have an open door policy, that they can give us a call at any time, and that we're building relationships with them. Part of some of the engagement with HOK that I was a part of, what we heard back from the developers is that there are many different towns and cities that they go to, that it's a very adversarial type approach, that it's always a fight to get through. And, we really, part of the strengths I think we can move really forward on is to really flip that switch, is that we're open for business. We want to work with them. We respect their investment, and, they're the ones that have mostly the financial skin in the game, so to speak. In that same way, we still want to have high standards to promote the town, to promote their project, and hopefully move forward in a more collaborative partnership manner. So happy to get any feedback on this. As I said, the 5 points, because they're quite separate, I'm going to stop after each one, just to give you a chance to give any feedback or ask any questions.
Are you going to continue on the 5?
No, we're done with this one.
Then I would,
So,
yeah.
great.
Councillor Sobel.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd really, especially coming off the last presentation that we just received, I'm not sure how to exactly word this, but this is such a positive, forward-thinking and absolutely amazing philosophy that you've put together, and I really, really appreciate it. This is, and I won't speak for council, but this is certainly the ideal philosophy that I've been looking for years.
Thank you.
in your department, and I acknowledge it and I support it, and I thank you for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just crane my neck here. So I really like that, you guys were using words like facilitate and collaborate. Basically, you want to work with these people, and you want to make it, like, we're all like basically a team, and you want to help them, like, get the job done, rather than kind of, just being kind of a guard that's standing in the way of them doing wrong. You're trying to help, like, kind of get the process. So I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that, Councillor Montgomery. Any other comments? Okay, that part's great. Thank you,
Great.
Justin.
Thank you. The next one I'd like to give you a quick update on is a development services applicant survey. So we've put together a survey to be able to receive feedback on our level of service. So I put together some snippets of the survey. It's online. We have links to all our applicants that our planners send out to, as well as we have paper copies at the counter. Just the type of questions we ask is what the permit you're applying for, so we know what the process is, whether it's a building permit, land use amendment, or a DP. We ask about the overall ease of the application process, so we've given them some examples in terms of the templates, counter service, payment, online resources, and then they have an option to choose from poor, which is a number 1, all the way up to number 4, which is an excellent, and give some comments to that. Third question is more about the overall clarity of the requirements and the processes, and we thought we would ask them sort of more of a layman's term questions for them to know exactly what we're getting at. So for this example, did the file manager clearly convey what was needed? And so again, similar scoring and the comments. Number 4 is for the approval time. Again, was the timeline appropriately conveyed, and did we meet that timeline? Same scoring and also comments. And just the overall quality of the customer service. And then we asked some open-ended questions, such as what was the best part of dealing with development services, what areas can we improve, and any additional comments. So we did send out quite a few emails to applicants. So since January and March, we've had 9 responses. We definitely hoped for more, but we can't really force someone to do it. So sometimes no news is good news, and we've actually got great responses back. So I'm just going to very quickly go through the 9 responses. So for the 9 we got was the 3 building permit, 2 DPs and 4, and the others were for home occupation, ASP amendment, plumbing, and electrical permits. Please rate the overall ease. So we received a 3.67 out of a possible 5, so 7 out of the 9 responses was excellent, which we're proud of, and 1 was fair. And some of the great comments we got. So our great planner Chuck got personally mentioned in the comments, and just some of mention about our excellent customer service. And one of the things we can improve on is obviously just one applicant made a comment that the permit requirements were not fully explained. So we can certainly make sure that when we sit down with people that they know what their requirements are. Number 3, the overall clarity of the application. So this we received a 3.56 out of a possible 5 again, 5 excellent, 4 good, and again good mention for Chuck, and just some other really good comments about the farm manager. And the permit application we are looking at in terms of making it clear, and if people feel it's confusing.
Just a shame that James is not here to hear all these incredible things about you. I think he's crying, actually.
Yeah. In terms of the approval time, again, we really mostly positive, 3.56. Some of the comments, yes, perfect timing. We did get some comments about the engineering responses, so I know we've had some turnover in that area. Some people working part-time, so the town is, at the moment, I believe, hiring for a full-time engineering support. So we definitely believe that these timelines will be taken care of with the new hire. And just the overall quality of the service, again, really good score. Good comments about the staff, and this time Mitza got a personal mention, which is great for her, and that the permit was done very quickly. Just some personal comments again when we asked them for people to expand. Won't go through each one, but overall sense was that the service was great. Number 5 I really liked was that we are fortunate to have personal relationships with the town. So again, that's really something that we want, is for people to be able to walk in, know who they need to talk to, give us a call and an email, and then they'll get a personal response and good comments about friendly and helpful. What areas can we improve? So the permit form, as I said, right now it's a paper form. We'd love to get to a time where people can fill out forms online. We'll definitely go through our forms to make sure that they are easier. And again, a couple of comments about the engineering side of things, which again, as I said, through the new hire, I believe will be solved. Any additional comments? Really positive again. Keep up the good work. Strathmore is faster than other municipalities, and great community, great place to have our business. So, yeah, I think overall, in terms of the 9 that we got, I said we've probably 80% success. I think we can always improve, but I said the comments we got back were really positive. Any questions on that side of things?
Questions from councillors? Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Justin. The one thing that I've learned while sitting here for 16 months or so is that your department will have an interview or a meeting with people before they enter into the whole development process.
Yes,
But I don't see that in the survey, and I think that that really separates you from a lot of other municipalities, that you offer this for free.
Right.
And I would like to know whether or not people are taking advantage of it, or if
Absolutely.
they know that they can do that, because it can make things, run so much easier
Absolutely.
if you meet with them at the very beginning when they come to you with the idea.
Yeah, so this week I think we've had about 4 pre-apps this week, or 3 maybe. So we have been using social media to let people know once a week through our tweets and through our posts that they can come in. So there have been quite a few applicants that have taken advantage of that. I don't believe we received a DP application without a pre-app and since the last 3 months. So I do believe that pre-app option has been sent loud and clear, and people are taking advantage of
That's
that.
excellent.
So-
I'm just so pleased and almost I'm proud for you guys because you're making steps and changes to just really work with the community, and I really agree. I would like people to know that you're open for business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Any other comments? Councillor Sobel?
I just want to comment that I was very impressed with the fact that Chuck Proctor was mentioned so many times in this report.
And were you wanting his autograph, Councillor Sobel? Chuck, if you wouldn't mind signing a few things on your way out, would be wonderful. Thank you.
What we didn't mention was that was his dad filling out the...
And the blush begins again. We're just trying to make you blush more. Sorry, I was enjoying that so much. Councillor Peterson.
I just, when you have a council that's like 45% teachers, report cards are always good. And positive report cards are wonderful. I think this is such a mindful process that you've put before us, and now council needs their own report card, and it will be set. But thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much. You have another section to go
Yes,
over?
very quickly. So something we've really tried to, improve moving forward is the relationship between the planning departments of ourselves and also Wheatland County. So we have some, what we've set up is actually a monthly planning update meeting where we get to share some of our exciting projects, and there are a lot of things that do overlap with them. So that's been great to meet their planners and some of the people, and that they're quite similar ages with some of our planners and Chuck and those young people. So it's a great learning opportunity, I think, for them to be able to share that. So we actually started that a couple of months ago, and things have been going really well. And something that was a great success. So last month, as you know, that the town transitioned towards a new safety codes provider. They were also the successful proponent for the county. So the town actually partnered with them to host a joint open house for park. So it was a great show of partnership and collaboration. And something we're also working on is a joint planning area memorandum of understanding. So there seems to be some lack of consistency when we circulate applications to the county and when they to us. It's sort of an ad hoc approach. So again, consistency is something that I'm really trying to bring into it. So what we are looking at is a joint planning area map. So just where the orange is, so any applications within that area in terms of the county and any of the green kind of into us, there's a common kind of understanding that how we would circulate. And important thing is if there are any issues or concerns arise, we don't want to get to a point where things are taken to SDAB or B appealed. So we can't guarantee things won't, but in terms of us as a town not appealing and in terms of the county not appealing, that's something we want to try and avoid. So we've gone through a resolution process in terms of the planners getting together first to address it. If that can't be done, it goes to the managers and up the ladder, so to speak. And again, it's just trying to be transparent and open with them with applications at our boundaries. So.
Any questions or comments on that? I really like the idea of collaborating more with them as a group and working together, because we have to think in terms of the region from now on anyway. So I think that's great. Deputy Mayor Bauer, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. Sorry.
Thank you. So under question 8, there was a comment about new additional demands that add cost. Do you know what that was referring to?
Sorry, are we going back to the survey?
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Sorry, question 8, the town is... Unfortunately, we don't. I did look into that one. That was related to a building permit. Maybe there was they changed use or whether they had to meet the building code. We haven't added any costs to the development permit, so we can certainly look through that. We did want to make the survey, we didn't ask some people's names. We went back and forth with that a while. We wanted to make sure that people knew that this was anonymous and that they felt open. So that's why in the survey I did put my name in the front at the end of it. So if I felt that there was someone who really wanted to share something, and they would come back to me. So I haven't heard anything back from that area, but that's probably the one that I think I was guessing at, that they had to improve something based on the building code, not specifically our requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. Any other comments or questions? Okay.
So I'd like to talk about the Strathmore Real Estate Appreciation Event. So we have a vision to host an event. It's sort of a follow-up to some of the work that happened under Ryan a couple of years ago, as well as to thank many of the people that have been involved with the HOK process to date. Our aim is to have it by the end of May. And we believe this is an opportunity to really relaunch the town's development and economic vision, really reiterate the new mandate and the vision, get people excited to work with the town. We'd love for council to be there, say a few words. We are working on an exciting keynote speaker that I believe can really draw a lot more people to this event and really give opportunities for the senior leadership and our AcDev officer to say some words too. And again, as a report back, some of the key recommendations and follow-up items for HOK. We'd love this to be an opportunity for face-to-face conversations, that council can be at the table with the industry, learn from them. We're going to put together sort of discussion guides to be able to really help that. One idea we thought of is maybe even booking a bus tour. So if we're able to get some external people here who have never been to the town, take them for a drive, take them to our great facilities and amenities. May 30th, hopefully there'll be no snow on the ground, so they can see our park. So we're still in the process of going through it, but we just wanted to let you know that this is an event. We are planning, the date is tentative, but we definitely are planning to host an event. The potential location that we'd like to get some feedback on, or yes or no, is the local brewery. We think it's a fantastic venue. It's a local setting. It's an informal environment. It's a great opportunity to celebrate a local business and a great local success story. They've hosted many great events there. It's a very open venue. They have mics, you know, so we could look into actually catering. And again, it's just a neat little place to bring people to, rather than just your typical travel lodge and a typical, I don't want to use the word stuffy, but you know, we'd like to make this exciting, informal, something neat for people to come out to the town. So yeah, we'd like some feedback on this, but I said we think it'd be a great, and I said just they have a fantastic local Strathmore story. We met with the owner. They'd love to say some words as well in terms of really trying to promote the town and their business. So yeah, that's the update on that one.
Any questions or comments on that section? Okay, thank you.
So just very quickly, major project updates. We are still following up on the business licenses. We've put some tweets and also social media out to make people aware. We have about 70% paid to date. They have a month to pay it, otherwise they'll be in infraction of the bylaw. There'd be a fine placed on their account. The Park Enterprises transition has gone extremely well. We've
Your Worship.
received some great comments back.
Councillor Cox?
Administration needs an emotion.
Oh, thank
Sorry
you.
to interrupt you,
Deputy Mayor
Jason.
Montgomery?
This is why I exist. I'll move we come out of Committee of the Whole.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? We're now out of Committee of the Whole.
I'll move we extend the meeting till 10:30.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion and their sighs and groans. All in favor? And Deputy Mayor Montgomery?
I will move we go back into Committee of the Whole.
Thank you very much. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. And Justin?
No problem. So the park inspection transition's gone really well. We've got some really positive feedback back from our applicants. So I think, yeah, I said, well, we made a good choice. Part of that, we are preparing for our internal safety codes audit. Solarcraft, we are continuing to meet with adjacent landowners and the engineers and WID. Ryan and Chuck are leading that, so they'll definitely be able to give you more information. We had a pre-application meeting, as you brought up, with the WID and the Marigold, so we look forward to their upcoming DP application. Looks like a great facility, and we're really working with them on that. Southside Station, which is a new 9-bay retail strip mall. That's been an ongoing project, but we believe we're very close to finalizing those plans. We had a pre-application meeting today about the town hall application, so that's going really well. So we look forward to theirs and seeing that move through as fast as we can. In terms of some new growth and some new residential subdivisions, we are expecting the Edgefield Phase 2 plan to go around the new school. Really had some really positive marketing feedback back in terms of what the school's draws and encouraging people to come and buy in those lots. We're still reviewing the Coldwell Ranch area structure plan. Had a very successful meeting with the developer last month. There'll be some changes made as we move forward with them. And I think part of council's direction to our team, which we'll come back with, I believe, next month, is just reviewing the current ASP status of the quite a few of those we have that are either stagnant or sterile and not moving forward, and just to give council an update on those progress. So we are reaching out to all the landowners and the developers just to see where they're at, and we'll come back to you with an update on that.
Thank you very much, Justin. Any comments or questions on that section? Seeing none?
Thank you.
That's the last one?
That's the last one.
That's good, though. That was a lot of information. Appreciate the report. So that brings us to item 6.3, Responsible Animal Control Bylaw number 18-18. And Trent West, are you speaking on this? Welcome.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Your Worship, Council. Tonight, as information, I bring forward to you for your review and comments and feedback the new proposed responsible animal control bylaw. The objective of the task, as we originally started back in June of last year, was based on a presentation that came forward to council with regard to a family wanting to have a potbelly pig, a pygmy pig, as a matter of fact. At the time, it was prohibited unless, of course, it was identified as a support animal. And we were tasked with trying to, so council's direction was to allow for provisions in the bylaw that were less restrictive. And in this case with this presentation and the bylaw, I believe that we've achieved that task. While reviewing the old clunky bylaw and a number of other bylaws, the policies of council associated with animal care and owner responsibility, it was felt that we could pull everything together and create a one-stop for all things related to animals and reduce any confusion that may exist amongst the plethora of bylaws that we had in, Ryan's rubbing off on me, plethora of bylaws that were out there that were associated with animals and animal control in town. Yeah. So for administration, it was our goal not to just refresh the old bylaw, but to review and consider some considerations for existing municipal bylaws, The objective was develop a bylaw that would account for any reasonable requests from a resident regardless of the ask. Create a bylaw with annexes so that the main bylaw could endure and annexes could be amended or added quickly by administration for council approval. And this function can remain nimble to address future requests. The original objective of the bylaw intended to research other considerations like urban beekeeping, urban farming for future annexes. However, the great work of Chuck Proctor allowed us to develop our first example of the use of annexes and has been included in this bylaw. Thank you, Chuck. See, I said everyone needs a Chuck. I had a Chuck for this one. Yeah. Yeah. Some of the questions that we wanted to answer for council was, how does this impact the community? We believe that there's no significant impact or effects on the community. However, we do anticipate enforcement being involved in conversations between neighbors as new opportunities or new conditions are rolled out through annexes and through the bylaw. So public education over the fence is something that we definitely have planned, as well as public education working with communications going forward. Does it impact the budget and the resources? Proposed fee increases and distribution of identified funds will seem to be positive, and the fee recommendations and increases that are being proposed will be coming to council in April as the amendment comes forward at that point in time, along with some other fee amendments that are proposed. So I do have them here that are proposed, but they're not part of this attachment because they're separate. This does not impact the budget negatively. In fact, this may increase the budget slightly with the additional licensing of the beehives and exotic pets. Resourcing impacts to enforcement will be tracked to determine exact implication, but it is not anticipated there will be much in the way of changes for municipal enforcement. The one thing in the proposal is that administration has the opportunity to set conditions and provide for more fast-acting responses to requests. And so the time spent by the CAO or the designate to address the new features of the bylaw will be tracked so that as this is a new service. There will be more complaints between neighbors that feel the person next door is not attending to their animals or their bees. This should become less and less with time and education. As far as service levels, the service level increases overall. Yes, some service levels are also newly established, such as the bees and the exotic pets, which didn't exist before. So yes, it is a service level increase when it comes to the enforcement education and our engagement with the community. As far as the alignment with the council's strategic plans, it's referenced on page 33, all of those alignments to council's strategic plan. So I won't review them, but I do want to point out that directly in the mission statement, promoting the well-being of the community is a council mission statement, and I believe that the balance that we've provided through this bylaw and the ability to be very nimble and respond to not just the one ask, but a number of other opportunities that could come our way in the future quickly and get in front of council without having to go through the entire bylaw will be very helpful going forward in the future. I don't need to go over that. I don't need to talk about my documents. So in conclusion, we believe that that administration, the direction was that administration review the current bylaws to provide more inclusiveness, such as non-traditional pets, urban beekeeping, urban farming, while continuing to ensure the protection of the community. We believe that this will be done by developing nimble political and administrative systems and processes that meet the needs of a progressive, inclusive community that prides itself in sharing of social capital and understanding the value of social contract with each other now and in the future. I am open for any questions. I thank those individuals that sent me some typos and some changes. I've captured them and have collected those documents so that I can make those changes. and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor Sobel?
Thank you, Your Worship. I didn't know we had an opportunity to send you something ahead of time, Chief, so I apologize. There's a couple of issues I have, but mostly, I mean, I'm really impressed with the changes in the new bylaw. I really like the fact that we're incorporating a license for beekeeping. I think that's a really good idea. I also am very impressed with the new policy regarding cat licensing and the fact that funds from that project fee will be directly sent to the Happy Cat Society on an annual basis. I thought that was amazing. So if we went to Annex A, so I don't understand the reasoning for a certification of from a Canadian authority qualifying the animals as an emotional support animal. What if it's strictly a support, perhaps stay-at-home support animal? What would what would the reason that we would require certification for?
So what we were trying to avoid, through the chair to Councillor Sobel, what we were trying to avoid was people randomly just feeling that, I'm trying to think of a good example, 3 chickens were their support animal, and I apologize, I probably shouldn't use that example because there's a lady in another community that's actually doing that. We were trying to avoid every animal being a support animal. We were trying to work towards having, without questioning a doctor's recommendation or support towards an individual who requires that comfort and companionship, we were looking for certification. Like, is this a support animal?
I got you, but I guess where I was coming from is, what if it's a dog or a cat?
Yes. So the American Kennel Club, any of those type of organizations, and I use the example of the potbelly pig that was before council several years ago. And then I refer you to Mr. Sonstaby, who,
yeah,
the pygmy pigs are, there's an official organization that recognizes.
But that was because it wasn't covered anywhere else.
Correct.
I'm talking about when it is covered. So just a regular dog as a support animal, it would still have to be certified as a support animal?
No,
But where does it say that? That it doesn't? I read this as saying that anything considered, all animals considered a support animal have to be registered as support animals. And I could be wrong, Chief. I just don't see it. Now, sub 3.
Yes.
Does make the exception, but you're still covered under sub 1, part 1.1. Can I leave that with you?
Yes, please.
All right, and it might be there, and if that's covered, if a dog and cat is covered, your normal domestic pets, then I'm good. But I just want to make sure that we're not forcing people who use a dog for a support animal to go through the step of having it
Understood. Thank you,
certified as a support animal.
I'll look into that and make
Because
sure I have a response for
the
that.
focus here is on exceptions.
For sure, and that would defeat the whole purpose of this entire bylaw if we were nimble and being able to respond to, and then we threw a great big old wrench
Right
into
on.
the middle of it.
And when we go into what is this? My goodness. It is section 2.1, I should have known that, 2.1 KK, definition of support animal. And that's on page 52 of the
Yes.
Would those include therapy and companion animals, Chief?
Just 1 second, Counselor, I'm gonna try and catch up with you.
Okay.
21KK. Wow, this is a big.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Because they're, I don't know if they're interchangeable in regards to definition. I understood that they're different categories of, there's a support animal, there's a therapy animal, and there's a companion animal.
Correct, yeah.
All which normally need, that's right, but I think service dog is defined.
Mm-hmm.
But therapy and companions are not in there.
Good catch.
Good. Thank you.
And you got to help me with this one. I really had a hard time with, Chief. It is Section 6, offenses,
Yes, sir.
and it's sub 10. And the keeping of a human is the one that really got me going. I think that's illegal criminally.
In most good countries, yes, it is. Yeah. And that is a hangover from the previous bylaw. It doesn't need to be.
Is it in there?
It is, yes, sir. Yeah.
He's just being really thorough, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
We have to exclude some things.
yeah, maybe that whole section can be just reviewed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because I knew that the human thing was one issue, but I had another one, and I'm taking a lot of time here, and the only other comment I would make is, thank you for including the disallowance of animals to be outside a passenger cab of a motor vehicle. I really appreciate that, and that's all I have, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Peterson.
My first question, Chief, is on page 42, and it in section 3, under the policy. So there was a time, I remember when the CAP bylaw first came in, this bylaw probably more than anything else created for really bad neighbors. Mm-hmm. And because anybody that wanted to give some payback, could trap their neighbor's cat. It was, and so I'm just wondering, and I really appreciate that you've included the documentation in the policy around Happy Cat, but on page 44, on the animal trap agreement, would there be any sense, and I don't ask for an answer tonight, but would there be any sense in including in the agreement section there somewhere, either an agreement or a suggestion even under that Happy Cat could be called or contacted, because we do have a partnership with them, and it just would maybe encourage a better good neighbor policy.
Through the chair to Councillor Pearson, I actually absolutely love the idea, and we will make sure that that's in.
And relates to number 5, under section 2, on the beekeeping, and I just I think I know what it means, but the term adjacent, when we say adjacent neighbors, are we talking about the people just next door? Are we talking about the people behind the alley? And I know you addressed this once before, Chuck, but I don't remember.
Thanks, Councillor Peterson. So if you go to part 1 on page 37, we do a definition there for adjacent neighbors. No problem. It means a site that is contiguous or to another site along a common property line.
Oh yeah, I did see
a
that.
site that is adjacent across the rear lane, but not across the street. So they would have to notify the neighbor on the either side and the neighbor across the lane. But they wouldn't have to notify the neighbor across the
street, yeah.
Because their backyard is going to be quite far away.
So in terms of that, I know that sometimes urban bees can travel a good distance, and is it useful, do you think, to go beyond this? To give people a sense of comfort? I don't know the answer to the question, but
Through the chair to
I don't
Councillor
have an
Peterson,
opinion.
it's completely up to council what they want to have in this bylaw. And what you folks think the proper notification is for this new program. I did have the Calgary District B Club folks have a look at this bylaw, and they thought that was quite good notification, and I did base this bylaw
Okay.
off of what similar stuff they're doing in Calgary. Some notification can be really well-intentioned for folks, if we want to do a big, larger area, but then that can also kind of maybe prohibit some folks from also
yeah. Yep.
approaching the craft, but it's completely up to what council prefers.
I just know before, I remember, we had concerns of people who sit in this council who are or have family members that, that have severe allergy to, an anaphylaxis. And I'm just wondering, but so in terms of Calgary's experience, do you know, have they had a lot of pushback on this?
As far as I know, Councillor Peterson, not a lot of pushback at all. When I ran through a sample complaint scenario in November with you folks, and I still think it's pretty similar to that once there's a complaint, the district, in fact, the members of that club are also notified, and they can help diffuse the situation along with staff if needed. But that being said, I think working with Mr. West, safety is our number one priority with the Urban Bees. It is going to be a new program in town, and it's completely up to what council deems necessary for notification. For a development permit in the land use bylaw, we would do a larger thing. It would include that guy across the street, but for the B one, we proposed not to. But we're happy to include whatever council wishes.
I'm very grateful for what I see in front of me, and I thank both of you for all your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for all your work on this, Trent. My first question is just regards on Annex A when it talks about these animals not being allowed in public, let's say unrestrained. Does that include, for instance, like a dog park or any other off-leash areas? Because we were kind of jokingly before talking about this pig going to the dog park. Is that going to be precluded, let's say?
It's, so the intention was to allow the owner to go to an off-leash area and determine if they want to be off-leash or not, being as responsible for their pet as any other dog owner that is in there with an off-leash animal.
Okay, so the way it's worded, like when they say like at large, or when you say at large, that doesn't include being in an off-leash area, for instance?
That's correct.
Okay. And then I noticed there was a difference in the amount of time given to remove an animal. One case was 24 hours and the other was 72. Like one was, I think, just like an emotion, like the support animal versus a regular animal, I believe. And I was just wondering why there was a difference in that amount of time.
Yeah, Councillor, without being specific, I can't tell you, but I will look it up and I'll address it when I bring this forward again. So time differentials.
Yeah, for instance, like the one is the exotic animals that create a nuisance is 72 hours, but I think the regular ones are, yeah, the support animals are 24 hours. Okay, my next one is, for anybody that wants to turn to it, is page 36 of our agenda. So it'd be enforcement, so part 3. And so I'm just wondering about like where we're saying that a bylaw enforcement officer may enter any property in order to ascertain whether or not the provisions of this bylaw are being observed. Is there any obligation for probable cause with our enforcement?
So it's typically going to be based on complaint or concern.
Yeah.
And those type of concerns would be if someone felt that an animal was in distress. And so for the well-being of the animal, we would access the property to determine if it was in distress. So that's what we mean by being able to access right away. Now, as far as interaction with the homeowner, that would definitely occur following that. And if that means we have to come back later on in the day to say, hey, we've secured your animal from your backyard because we felt it was in distress and we've put it in the pound and oh, by the way, this is where it's at, then that's what we would be doing. Or we feel that you need to take a look at your pet, but there would be a return visit in any case, every time.
Like, so if somebody calls and complains and says like, hey, I think my neighbor's got a chicken, you know, and you go over and you don't see any chickens in the backyard, can you like go in their house and
No.
look for a chicken?
Absolutely
Okay,
not.
so that's not what's included of
No.
entering the property?
Not in the
Okay.
province of Alberta.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, thank you. And with regards to, so on page 38 of 108, so that would be Annex A, I believe, Section H, where is that? No, that's not it. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but just where it talks about like, first-year beekeepers need to provide proof of support and assistance of an accepted mentor, and I couldn't find a definition of an accepted mentor, so I was just wondering what that was.
Thanks, Councillor Montgomery, through the chair. It is a good question. We would want, for a first year beekeeper, we would want some sort of proof of support of someone with a membership or accreditation or involvement with the Calgary District Beekeeping Club.
Okay.
You're right. It isn't defined, but that's what we'd be looking for. So they would have, for first year beekeepers, proof of support and assistance from an accredited mentor, and then in addition to that, we would be looking for some sort of proof in success in a beekeeping training and an accepted beekeeping course as well. On top of those things, they aren't defined. But I think that the type of people that are going to apply for this kind of stuff are going to know. And if I think if the Development Authority, the folks reviewing these applications have any questions, I got contacts at the Beekeeping Association to say, hey, is this acceptable? Are we okay to process this license? We're happy to reach out, especially while we're still getting kind of our handle on how we approach these licenses. We essentially just want to ensure that this first year beekeeper has some support in case things get out of hand, or has at least the beginner introductory course to beekeeping, so he or she knows what he's getting into.
Is there any mechanism to determine, like, say somebody's like, been beekeeping, previously, and then not in the town of Strathmore, obviously, like, would they be considered a first-year beekeeper, or?
I think that, as long as they have experience, it would definitely cross over.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Montgomery.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And my other question, so it has to do with what effect would a lack of permission, because it says like you have to get permission of your neighbors. So if one of your neighbors says, I don't like this idea, does that mean they don't get to do it?
This is a very good question, Councilor Montgomery. You actually caught a mistake in the bylaw. Thanks for bringing this up. If I can bring you to page 39 on the 108.
It's fast, but are we going to have a requirement for a timeline to get rid of bees if somebody is not following the rules?
That's a great question as well, Councilor Montgomery. We don't mention a timeline in here. Just trying to think of a sample complaints, a scenario that would happen. Maybe we could look into that bring it back with the bylaw. Because it would be important to have a timely response to these things.
Like even if it was like a week or something like that,
Yeah.
right? Just so they're not dumping them, but.
The way that we have this set up and the way it works in Calgary is, you call 311, which is the Calgary line, and the district, the club, is actually notified first and they respond right away. So sometimes the city staff, actually most times city staff aren't even involved in these things, but I think that may be kind of a clause where, we give a time for staff. That's a great question.
Okay.
Would you like us to do that, Councillor Montgomery? Thank you.
Like it would probably be prudent to like have something in there just to do with like at least kind of checking back after a certain amount of time and making, but even, just providing that resource of saying, hey, call this, this group and they'll take it. So, or they'll at least, find somebody that will. That's, so I think on that same page under part 5 and number 6, no, sorry, number 9. So it just like, I saw a couple points where it mentioned, so it says subject to section 12 and 13 above. Is that referring to like the section 12 and 13 of the bylaw?
So again, through the chair to Councillor Montgomery, thanks for reading the bylaw. You caught another one of the mistakes in the bylaw.
And it's also, just so you know, it's also
Yeah.
in part 4, number
Yes.
2, it also mentions that as well.
There's about 5 of these little typos, and the reason for these typos, I apologize, it's completely my fault. When I wrote this original bylaw, it was a standalone bylaw with its own sections. And then I transferred it to Trent's team, and some of the section numbering and layout was mismatched. I have them all flagged. They're all going to be checked and then rechecked for this April bylaw. But there are some issues with referring to previous sections, with just the way that I had the previous bylaw set up.
Okay,
So
I was flipping back and forth and I was
Yeah,
like, I was trying to make sense of it and yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, thanks for reading so closely, Councillor Montgomery.
You're very welcome. Okay, yeah, and I'm sorry to be so pedantic
No,
sometimes,
no.
but that's my word of the day calendar, by the way. Pedantic. I got it from Family Guy.
We have a Ryan, you have a Councillor Peterson.
Shallow and pedantic.
He did, that's what he said.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I got it. Well, that's where I heard the word originally, and so I looked it up. And I was like, hey, that's really good. So my other question, with regards to, so the animal trapping and the neuter and the spay policy, what is the town's responsibility for injured or unhealthy domestic animals where we can't identify an owner? Because like it says like something about vet care. So to what extent, I guess, do we provide vet care and yeah, and I guess like is there a limit to what we would spend?
Absolutely, and Councillor, to answer your question, if the animal is recently, or is licensed for the year, we're gonna take it to a vet, because it may have been at large and being hit by or in a fight or something, and we're gonna provide it to the vet. We're gonna contact the owner and then let the owner and the veterinarian engage in whatever the next steps or processes are. With the cats, we're gonna engage with Happy Cat, because that's part of our arrangement with them. And they have special deals with the vets to work on some of the animals, or find an adoptee and make those arrangements. But if it's an unlicensed animal, we have no way of communicating other than with the cat, where we can talk to Happy Cat and say, what do you think? And then they would probably make the determination based on the degree of injury. It would go to the vet and the fees would be paid by Happy Cat. If it was an unlicensed animal, and the vet determined that it needed to be put down, it would be put down, and it would be a cost that we would incur for euthanization.
Okay, and I don't want to be like, I guess, insensitive, but like, like if the vet says it's going to cost $2,000 to fix this, dog's leg or something like that, like, is there a limit where we say, it's like $500 or that's it?
If it's unlicensed and it's going to cost any kind of money, it's gonna be put down.
Okay, okay, thank you. And in the definitions, it talks about a secure enclosure, and it lists, it mentions a cage, and I just want to be clear, so that the secure enclosure would include a doghouse or like a mobile cage or anything like that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't say arguably, to the satisfaction of the municipal enforcement officer. So if you've got a 4-foot cage and a Saint Bernard in there, it's not gonna work. But if you have a Chihuahua, then it's gonna be perfectly fine. So, you know, that's, again, we're putting the social contract on the individual who has the licensed animal to do the right thing, not just for the animal and for themselves, but for the community. And that being said, they're gonna do what they feel is best, and if they need to contact us to, and Michael's team to say, is this what's best? We would be happy to provide them with the information or an opinion.
Okay, okay, just because like I saw, like, you know, we actually specify like the size of the, okay. Sorry for having so many of these. And some of these I'll ask you later, so we're, so one question I had actually, so page 17 or 63 of 108, if you want to look for that.
And there.
So section 9, 4.
Yes, implied versus complied.
Well, that, like, yeah, but I guess what I'm gonna ask is, should there be like an and or an or? Because I'm asking, like, and pardon me if this is a dumb question, but does A cancel out B if the operator has the owner's permission? Or does the offense apply to the operator only in that case? Rather than the owner of the vehicle?
The offense is against the operator of the vehicle at that time.
Okay,
Correct. And not the owner.
okay. Does it say that anywhere where that the operator is liable?
If he gives permission.
Yeah, like, you know, under the assumption that they have permission of the owner. Because it doesn't quite say that.
Okay, I can take a look at that, Counselor, and see if there's,
Okay, that's just
there's some, I'll just put a question up there and.
as I'm going through these, I'm always trying to think of like a defense for if I was in this situation, and so I tend to kind of read things, like, how would I get out of this if I was in court? So,
That's why this is so long, Counselor.
yeah, sorry. I'm just trying to make this like kind of loophole proof, basically. So on page 18 of the bylaw, so the very next page, so 64-108, section 10, number 3, 4, and 5. So it just kind of talks about time periods that the animal may be kept for, but they're like a minimum amount of time. So, like, you wouldn't keep it like a minimum of 72 hours if, you know, like, there was an easy way to get rid of it to the owners?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Because as long as we have the animal in our care,
Yeah.
it's in our care.
Yeah.
So if we can give it back to the owner and make the coupon transactions for the fines that are appropriate and put the responsibility of the animal back on the animal, the owner, that's what we want.
Okay. Like, so what, can you tell me, I guess, the intent of saying that it may be kept for a period of at least 72 hours? Why would we say, like, that it may be kept for a minimum of 72 hours?
Specifically because of the staffing, and so we might pick up an animal on a Saturday, and then there's a statutory holiday. and-
So you're just saying, like, there's a chance if we pick up your dog, you might not get it back for
Exactly.
72 hours? Okay, that's, okay, thank you. Okay, and guess what? That's all of my questions. Like I said, I'll follow up with you, and I have a couple more kind of technical ones, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for putting up with me.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. Councillor Bauer.
My question just has to do with the offenses. And when I looked at the bylaw 05-15, I was able to cross-reference it on the website, that it had a list of offenses and then the first and second amounts that were associated with that. So I was just wondering, when was that last done? And will that be looked at? Is it part of this bylaw or is it separate? And how will that be incorporated into this?
Through the chair to Councillor Bauer, thank you. So it's not part of this bylaw. It is part of the fees bylaw.
Okay.
And we have this document that's ready to be completed with first, second, and third offenses where it lines up with the bylaw. Once council has their feedback and the bylaw is passed, and I've got a structure for the increases from that document that you reviewed. That'll be coming to you in April as part of that fees amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for your presentation, Trent, and for answering the questions. And this will be coming to us in April. You were saying April? First meeting in April.
First meeting in April for this, the fees bylaw. 17th is when the fees bylaw is coming.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trent.
And that brings us to item 6.4, Recreation All Access Pass. Mark Pretzlaff, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council. Let's make it one. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Your Worship, Council, I'll try to be brief, considering the time, but I'd like to special thanks Chuck Proctor for all his work on this one. Chuck, thank you again. So at Council's request, administration explored the idea of an all-access recreation pass. In the report, we conducted a review of municipalities that we based other fees on. They're listed on the screens or in the reports here. We also included a couple, Strathcona County as one, Strathcona County or Sherwood Park as one municipality that has multiple facilities within their jurisdiction, all ranging in different amenities. The framework of the pass would be as follows. That would include all drop-in skating at the family center, shinny, swimming at the pool, open swim, public swim, lane swim, etc. Gym sessions at the sports center, pickleball, volleyball, etc. Obviously, any open turf times, and then obviously unlimited access, which is walking and things like that, to the sports center. We presented here three options for council's recommendations or for consideration. Option one is presented here, and it ranges with about a 13% to 19% discount off of the annual memberships of the sports center and aquatic center. The family center wasn't really factored in just because the annual costs are very minimal already just for that facility. I think it's about $73 for an adult. Option two presents at a 23 to 28% discount, or increase, I should say, not discount. And then option three is a 7 to 13% increase, providing council for some options here. So if I can finish my presentation, I can allow you guys to have, I'm sure, a lot of questions for me at this one. Facility membership upgrades, recognizing that some members or some users may have already purchased memberships, providing them potentially an option to upgrade. We're again presenting three options towards council for their feedback. Option one, excuse me, is a flat dollar value trade-in. Option two is a free upgrade. And then option 3 is no trade and no upgrades. It is a challenge. It will be a challenge for administration to deal with this, because we'll have a variety of users that may have purchased passes in January versus May or something like that. But it is a factor that we can, that's why it's not prorated there. Excuse me. In terms of a campaign, administration feels that a two-part awareness campaign would be ideal, launching probably in June. Would allow our new recreation software to be tested. And then a second campaign to be launched in August and September, a back-to-school type of promotion. When, again, the third options here are administration, we're seeking some help from council on some names, potential names. Some more recreation, Let's More Pass, some more activity. I think you can get the trend on that one. Let's Move, and then just an all-access pass, which doesn't really have the pizzazz and things like that from a marketing campaign. So ultimately, in conclusion, the goal is to provide more opportunities for our community to get access to sport, health, and wellness for both, not just residents of Strathmore, but also the community. And with your support and some feedback on some of the questions we're asking, this would be presented at the April 17th regular council meeting. So at this time, your worship or council, if there's any questions, I appreciate your feedback on the 3 options.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that presentation and report. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for this report, Mark. I personally think that we should probably try to keep the cost of this down until such time as we are kind of offering, let's say, increased value. There's might be a couple things that we could add. So I would probably go with option 1, I think, at this point. And seeing as how nobody else has any lights on. So I was kind of, I looked around at other communities, the ones that you mentioned, and and I even, all right, well, I guess that's the end of my time. So one thing I guess is, like, are we going to be doing 1 month, 3 month, 6 month passes, or because I think we shouldn't just limit ourselves to annual passes for one. And then I see that you guys are offering prize draws to people that buy passes, and I think that's a great idea. I noticed Okotoks was kind of doing something similar. And then something that I've been kind of pushing the entire time since I heard about this was offering anybody in the community, let's say 1 per household maybe, but basically offering a free 10-day pass to anybody. And let's say, you could charge like some small amount for kind of like the processing and putting together the card or whatever. But because our citizens are all subsidizing, our recreation quite heavily already, I think it would probably, and as well at the intent of kind of, getting people into the habit of doing something, like fitness-oriented, people who might not otherwise, offering people a free one-time, 10 pass or month pass or something like that, I think would be a good idea. And then I noticed, like, Okotoks, for instance, has specials like 99 days for $99 during the summer. And they also offer a free month for people who renew the annual pass before theirs expires. And then you guys might find this strange, I'm suggesting it, but I noticed High River has a what's called a super senior pass, which is free for anybody over 80. So, that's...
You're making progress.
Yeah, we'll give them heart attacks, I'm just kidding, I'm sorry. And then the other thing I was thinking as well is people with the pass could get priority use of town facilities, like, say, the tennis courts. I think if you have a pass, and you show up and somebody maybe, doesn't have a pass, you should maybe be able to say, hey, I should get priority. And then the other thing was... with the SMP Center, would we consider letting, especially in kind of these slower times, letting people, say, run like camps, like, say a boot camp type thing, or Zumba classes, or, something to that effect? Have you guys considered something like that?
So there's a lot of questions in there. So
Yeah,
I'll
I
remember
know.
off the top of
I know,
my
I'm
head.
just trying to
So
rush them.
In terms of some of the things that you mentioned, in terms of promo and things like that, we haven't talked about that formally, but those
Yeah.
are some of the ideas that we banded around as a department. One of the ones I think Strathcona offers is when anybody turns 65, they get their free all-access pass, I think is one of the promotions that they use. Obviously, these all come at a cost towards the town, and you've indicated we're already subsidizing recreation. The question would then be to council is how much more would you like to subsidize it? But again, these are all questions that we can phase in and add additional promotions from year to year to try to drum up business. Excuse me, and continue to ensure that the facilities are utilized. In terms of at the sports center, in terms of running camps or boot camps or fitness classes, it's something that we've also looked at as well as our our adult programming. These things are gonna hopefully come out in either at the end of the fall or starting for next year, that we're gonna hopefully have fitness classes, group fitness training. Summer camps is a priority for us, whether it's this year or in connection with the youth hub, to try to figure out how to maximize those facilities in the slow times, typically the summer times.
Like, so are you thinking like you would have a staff member who would be doing these programs, or would you just be maybe open it up to like members of the public who might want to come in and offer those?
I think we have a couple options, whether we can find appropriate resources, whether the contract employees to run the fitness classes, no different than we do in the aquatic center for aqua size, and I think it's water running, where we employ a contractor to run those classes on behalf of the town. That would be, I think, our preference, but again, it obviously depends on whether we can find those individuals that are able to do that. The other option is that we could rent it as a facility rental, no different than we could for soccer, or they could rent the space and then they would charge their members accordingly, and we would then recoup some dollars based on their drop-ins.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, like, especially if it's like a super slow time, like in the morning or something like that, then, like it would make sense. Okay, and as far as like, I take your point about subsidization, but I just think like the more people we can kind of get into the habit, then we can charge them later kind of thing. So, but thank you for this report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mark, for your report, and I really love this idea of all access rates options. I have two that I brainstormed myself that I'd like to present to you. So I'd like to add to your list the Get S'more Fit Pass and the S'more Fit Pass. So I like both of those, so I'd like to push them forward. And I was just wondering, with other user groups starting to come into the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Center specifically, it's a lot of S's, will this impact them if we go to the all-access pass, in terms of they're already charging their people a fee to be able to, like, let's say a volleyball league or basketball league or whatever, and then we're going to have an access pass? How will we work with them to support those groups coming in while still having individual access to facilities?
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor Bauer, excuse me. Obviously, if they're a facility rental and they're doing an hourly rental, all their patrons of that time would be getting free access. And an all-access pass would be supplemental to that. So if there's one gymnasium open or devoted for volleyball or something like that, or pickleball, we still may have another gymnasium or the walking track or one of the artificial turf fields open for the drop-in users. It would be, as we've indicated in the framework, it would just be for drop-in use only. So when a facility is booked through a user group or some other booking, the drop-in users would have to utilize something else.
Okay. And then my last question just has to do with subsidization of recreation programs. Do you think that this all-access pass will actually bring the gap, like that we are subsidizing these programs, down? Or do you think it'll widen the margin?
You're asking me to predict the future here?
Yeah.
I'm
Do you
hope-
think people are going to jump on board for this?
I think ideally, I think the value's there, and to demonstrate, and for people to recreate, we're giving them more options. Ultimately, you may have some users that are I'm only a swimmer, or I'm only a walker, or I'm only a skater. We still would continue to offer those memberships or those annual passes or monthly for them. I think the goal is that people would see value in this, and then that way we would be able to subsidize all our facilities. At the end of the day, a lot of universities and a lot of post-secondaries offer a fitness or recreation pass to their students or their alumni or whatever the case may be, recognizing that the majority of them pay for it, not all use it. So ultimately, we'd hopefully that we'd increase our usage and get more people in there, and that would get the word. But you're still going to have a lot of people that may buy this and may not utilize all the facilities.
Okay, my last question, I think I said my last one was the last question, but it's not. For a family to be able to put out anywhere between $900 and $1,050 is quite a big commitment. Are we going to have a payment plan available for people so that they can pay monthly or maybe quarterly or something, so it makes it a little more affordable for families?
Yes, our new software will allow payment plans if we choose to do that. We've never actually done that within our facilities. It's always been pay up front, so that is an option for us down the road once our new software is in, if we choose to implement that sort of payment plan.
So that is a possibility. Okay, thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you. Very shortly, Mark. Thank you for this. Just two quick issues. One is in regards to the name. I really do like the Let's Move pass. The focus, and I'm sure you're going to go down this road when you start advertising these prices, but your numbers in option 1, option 2, option 3 talk about the increases as per the two facilities. In actuality, going the other way, I would suggest recognizing the amount of money that you're going to save if you go on this might be a better selling feature, and that's all I wanted to say. Like, for instance, on an adult pass, you would save $370 a year with this all access pass, and
right.
I'm once again, I'm sure you guys are going to head that way eventually. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a quick question, only because I've been to the
Ultimately, I think we no different than we do at the fitness center or at the pool. We'd have to potentially have to look to designate some free times in some of the spaces. If council would say that we could either maximize the revenue and sell every possibility, or we can designate some specific time for open public use. Right now, there is no standard per se, so that's something that we'd have to look into, and with council's feedback on in terms of the overall direction of that facility. Ultimately, I think our goal would be to have a balance, and really ultimately that's where we'd want to see it, balance of trying to recoup some operating dollars, but also being able to recognize and support opportunities for people to be active.
Absolutely, and cost us less. I would be just in favor of option 1 or 3. That's my feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Cox.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I've been told I don't really get to talk, so I'm just going to say option 3, option 2, and Let's Move pass.
Thank you, Councillor Cox.
I did, thank you very much.
And I'd be interested in option 3 myself as well. The names, I like the Let's Move pass too. Oh, sorry, option Actually, let me just come back to that after.
I was
Sorry.
gonna say, I agree with Councillor Cox about option 2 for the
Uh-oh, Councillor Bauer.
Point of order.
Okay.
I tried to be quick.
Yeah.
Thank you, and our apologies to Linda, we didn't get to your item, so would that be coming back at another time? Okay, so we need a motion to come out of committee of the whole. We have a motion to come out of the committee of the whole.
Move to adjourn, your worship.
All in favor?
Yeah, we did vote on committee of the whole.
Oh,
Didn't we vote?
we did vote. Oh. Oh, crap.
Okay.
I mean, darn.